Welcome back, everyone. Over to you, Maddie.
Hello, welcome back to track 2. We are very excited. We had some great morning sessions, and this afternoon is proving to be equally interesting. I'd like to welcome the next session, which I'm very interested in. It's about one of the most celebrated photo archives in the world. It is called Using AI to Empower Creativity and to Bring Archives to Life with Jill Golden. Now, if you're looking for Evoke Films, you're in the wrong session. Go back to the agenda and click on track 1. Also, during the session, I want to remind everyone to please send in your questions so that we can have a little discussion with Jill after her presentation. So please join me in welcoming Jill Golden, the director of the Life Picture Collection. Jill?
Thanks for welcoming me so kindly. So I wanted to introduce you guys to the Life Picture Collection and talk about some AI experiments that we've been conducting for the past 5 years. So let me share my screen. Yeah, so welcome to the Life Picture Collection. We're one of the largest corporately held photographic archives in the world. We have over 10 million photographs, and many of which you'll be seeing in the presentation today. So Life, of course, is very famous for its incredible photography. For example, from music celebrities such as the Beatles to being the photographers at John F. Kennedy's wedding. Many of our photographers pioneered certain photographic techniques, and so on. So just briefly about me, I've been at the Meredith Corporation, the parent company of Life, for about the past 6 years. Previously, I managed library archival products and services at Stanford University, New York University, and the US government. I have some graduate degrees related to information science and history, and our current dam system that we're using is Merlin 1. So let's get into it. Here's kind of the 3 sections of the discussion today. I'll introduce you to Life and the archive, and then you'll kind of understand the second part, which is the 2 AI ML tools that I wanted to talk about to help us with our archival work, and then some observations and suggestions for you to consider potentially in the future. And then hopefully there's plenty of time for discussion. So Life magazine was founded in 1936. It was the first photographic magazine in the United States. So basically the idea was that photographers would go out and shoot stories first and the text would be written later. The founder of Life was also the founder of Time magazine, Henry Luce. And here's his original vision for the magazine. So he basically wanted readers all around the world to see Life, to see the world, to see and be amazed. So he wanted to document everything. It wasn't just going to be sports or political events or Hollywood or fashion. It was all of those things and many more. Life also coined the term photo essay to describe what he wanted to do, which is to tell stories to the public through a series of photographs. So Life again started in 36, and during its tenure of about 36 years as a weekly, and then later for another about 40 years as a monthly, over almost 100 staff photographers shot stories every day. 120,000 stories were shot, 10 million frames of negatives were taken, and only 3% of these photographs were actually ever published. So a lot of what we do with retaining the whole archive is going through the photographs for clients, for researchers, for commercial products, for exhibitions, for events, for books, for movies, and so on. So very briefly, some of our star photographers. The first photographer hired for the magazine was Margaret Burke White. She was a photographic pioneer. She was the first woman credentialed as a combat photographer by the US government during World War II. She photographed everyone from Gandhi, as you'll see here, to Stalin. And then Alfred Eisenstein was also an early life photographer who shot for the magazine for decades. You might recognize the photograph on the right of the kiss at Times Square. That's actually the photographer himself on the left that same day, kissing his girlfriend. So a lot of these photographs that we retain the original negatives and prints of are pretty iconic. And of course, the first Black staff photographer hired by the magazine was Gordon Parks in the 1940s, an incredible fashion photographer, civil rights photographer. He later became a film director. He was also a musician, so a fascinating person. So on to the archive itself. As you can probably tell, we're an analog archive, but we've been trying to be digital since about 1998. So the different components of the archive, we have photographer reports, we have, again, those 10 million negatives, we have prints, we have office files, all kinds of materials that we've been digitizing. And so in the past decade, we've scanned about 7.4 million images to which Meredith and Life own the copyright to, everything from glass plate negatives to Kodachrome, Ektachrome, prints, and so on. So we have all of these incredible physical materials scanned. And the issue for us has always been, since they aren't born digital, they might not have incredible metadata. And because of the scale and the small size of our staff, we can't provide perfect captions and keywording for everything in the archive in order to make it navigable for clients and researchers. So that's kind of, where we're thinking today and how we're sort of moving a little bit to AI and ML. So Life today, very briefly, we're no longer a weekly or monthly magazine. We do, however, still publish special interest magazines, so more than 25 a year, as you'll see on the left. So these are print magazines on single topics, for example, Michelle Obama or James Bond. The Life Picture Collection, which is the subsidiary I run, it's responsible for the historical archive and manages all licensing, exhibitions, merchandise, everything that relates to the brand. And of course, any money that we make off of the archive goes back into the archive to pay for our warehouses, our staff, our digital preservation, physical preservation, and so on. And then we also have a digital presence at life.com and Life social media. So again, millions of photographs that we have to feed into these different internal clients, as well as these external clients. So we have brands come to us, such as Coca-Cola or the New York Yankees, wanting to use historical imagery for commercial campaigns. We have apparel licensees that like to use our logo and our photographs on clothing and products. We also do a number of exhibitions, books, films. We have fine art prints, as you can kind of see from the picture. So again, all of these activities are based on being able to search the archive in an efficient and effective and accurate way. Which brings me to AI and machine learning. So back in 2017, we started on our first experiment, and I'll just talk to you about 2 experiments today, although we've done many more, and feel free to contact me offline if you have any questions or want to share case studies. I'm always happy to chat. So the first one, well, even taking a step back, is I am not a computer scientist or an engineer, and when I use the term AI, I'm just going to give you the definition that I think of. So it's basically a tool that can solve a task that a human would normally solve with their intelligence, and then machine learning is basically a kind of AI that you can train to solve specific tasks based on data that you feed it. So when I mention those 2 terms, that's usually what I'm thinking. So our very first project was back in 2017, and this was when a lot of platforms were introducing auto-tagging as features that you could use. So the overall goal for any project that we do is we want to ensure the archive's longevity. And the way to do that is increase the audience and the revenue for Life photography and the Life brand, and then put that audience and revenue back into the collection. So again, our problem is scale. We have hundreds of clients contacting us on a weekly basis, and we have to research through millions of photographs over decades of materials. And we have about 80 years worth of uncontrolled descriptions. And of course, a small staff, we're just 4 people. And so we thought that if we can train an AI tool to help us with some of these human tasks, it could save us a lot of time and make our clients happier. So we decided to use AutoTagging as the first tool. And before doing that, we set some parameters of where we're comfortable. So we were not comfortable using facial recognition for a variety of reasons, which we can discuss. So all we wanted the AI to do was look for objects and actions. So train it to find a horse or a pair of jeans or a car or a person running or a person surfing. So that's really all the AI was searching for. Before we ran the images through the algorithm, we removed known sensitive imagery. So again, we have a lot of war photography. We don't really, we just don't want to experiment on our sensitive images. At that time, we didn't want to integrate the AI into our dam because we didn't know what the results would be. And we didn't want to confuse our users and clients with tags that might not be accurate. And we wanted to use an out-of-the-box AI. We didn't have on-staff engineers, so we wanted to work with a vendor that had a tool prepared for auto-tagging. And we got the population down to about 4 million photographs that we ran through the algorithm. So these are just some examples of one of the auto-tagging tests that we did. So it's really fun, as you'll see. Pills is one of the, so taking a step back, the out-of-the-box algorithm had its own thesaurus. So it had its own list of terms that it was searching for in the using computer vision. So we didn't train it to look for pills. It was just already trained on other materials. So these are photographs that came back with greater than 95% confidence that it's pills. And it's kind of charming that you see the basket of tomatoes in the middle. When you look at the JSON file behind the image, you can kind of understand why the AI might think it's a pill. And again, this is from 4 or 5 years ago. So these are kind of fairly early stage auto tagging. Again, with the out-of-the-box AI, digital camera was one of the tags that the computer vision was looking for. And of course, most of our photography ends in 1972 before digital cameras. So interestingly, we didn't factor time into the kind of terms that we're looking for. So digital cameras didn't really exist then. Maybe, moving forward, if we were to look through the potential thesaurus of words searched for, we would have stripped that out. And then, of course, things like food we found to be a little bit difficult. These are, again, we found some wonderful photographs of pizza that we might not have seen before, but we also have some imagery that, are mosaics or collages, as you can see from some of the images that I've circled that, again, a computer might read as pizza and a human might not. So just some quick observations from that first auto tagging experiment. So overall, it was worthwhile. It gave us a better understanding of how machine learning works. It was really interesting and entertaining. And it's important that our staff is engaged and feel like they have the tools at their disposal to be better at their jobs, to be on the forefront of technology. And it also, we did find a number of new images depicting objects and actions that we hadn't seen before, and it pointed us in new research directions. That was really exciting. So cons, you can probably guess what a few of them are. Even with an out-of-the-box solution, it can be very time-consuming to train, and even more time-consuming to conduct quality assurance on the results. At the end of the day, and this is perhaps a little bit more unique to us, we found that ultimately we're playing a game of keyword matching. So if an out-of-the-box AI has a list of tags that they use for every, potentially could use for every image that you run through it, you have to really be familiar with what keywords they're using, and you're ultimately trying to match them. confidence, like, and the confidence of the AI is a little unreliable. Like, again, those photographs of digital cameras, we're 95% confident, but of course, digital cameras didn't exist at that time. So there are certain facets and factors that it 5 years ago it didn't think about. Sometimes the AI would, depending on what it had been trained on, could return results with this extreme specificity. So for example, we spoke with about 4 or 5 different vendors, all have pros and cons. One of them, I guess, had been trained on computer recognition for military equipment. So a lot of our photographs of cars or tanks could be returned with extreme specificity that we don't have the expertise to check. Ultimately, we kept the metadata, but didn't add it directly to our DAM, just because sometimes it would we found that it introduced a little more noise than we were ready for, but we do retain it and have used it for other projects. So again, really worthwhile and a wonderful learning opportunity, and kind of maybe didn't save tons of time for us, but it really helped us engage with and find a path to making the archive more searchable. So cut to 4 or 5 years later, what we're looking at now. Right now we're experimenting with a few tools, but the one I'm going to talk about today is really machine learning for search. So we're not generating auto tags to add to our photographs. We are constantly improving our search engine. So basically this search engine is integrated into our DAM. It has 3 components. So it can learn language processing. So it reads our text and then creates a bunch of different options related to terms that we put in, so we don't have to worry as much about keyword matching. It does do computer vision, visual processing, so identification. And then it has a third engine that compares the text results and the computer vision results, and then comparing those two returns a result that it's more confident in. So very quickly, here are some, again, it's integrated into our DAM. Here are some queries and some results. So the query I put in is searching for an answer. So we might have a client that, or even on social media, maybe we want to find a photograph with a concept rather than an object or an action. And these are the results that were returned, which are pretty interesting, I think. And it's nice seeing the kind of conceptual search. And as you'll see here, the existing metadata for the image on the top left of, it's a photograph of a man in a field. It's the only metadata that we have is family moving to Canada. So we've been experimenting with how it deals with conceptual search, how it deals with actions. So we did a multiple people surfing as our query, and then we got some pretty good results, and the existing metadata was just sport essay photographs of various sports. So if we had just done a keyword search on existing metadata, it might not have turned up. And if it had just been auto tag of surfing, we would have had more results, because here the search engine understands that I'm looking for multiple people surfing. And again, family having fun at the beach. So it can factor in sentiment, smiling faces, groups of people and how they might be related to each other. Existing metadata was actually a shoot for a toothpaste ad, so we probably would not have found that. And then also it does a fairly good job of brands, which is, again, we have a lot of clients. So for example, woman in a Dior dress, we work with the Dior folks sometimes. So it returned a bunch of results. For example, charity ball held by the Knickerbocker Club, Waldorf Astoria. So then we can use that result and then dig in more with humans in the loop to verify that that is indeed a Dior dress. So this is kind of where we're moving a little bit away from being solely reliant on auto tagging as an AI tool to having a whole suite of AI tools but really digging into training search. So that's sort of where we are. So some quick observations and recommendations based on our 5 years of AI ML experiments. So overall, we can find photos faster, and that's exciting. And we see stuff every day we've never seen before using these kinds of tools. But there's definitely more human intervention required than we had anticipated. So it really, if you want to implement these tools, it will take a fair amount of time, both in implementation, review, process improvement, etc. We're so excited about our new skills, and we love to participate in conversations around and development of these tools, which is really important. The more we need lots of people involved in thinking about the applications of AI. And then, interestingly, we found that instead of spending more time on writing captions or keywording photographs, we really feel like our human effort should be spent more on identifying proper nouns, places, events, things that AI is not good at and may never really be that great at, because, at least for our collection, because this is historical imagery. So in some cases, there might only be, we might be the only photographs in existence of a certain event. So there's really nothing else to have trained it on. So that's really where we're going to focus our human labor on, is where these kinds of historical moments that require more human research. And again, we want tools that can factor in text and computer vision and time and sound and all kinds. Well, that's for a different archive. But yeah, so there are lots of tools out there, and we really enjoy exploring them. So on your right, you'll actually see an early computer game from 1950. It's a Birdie the Brain. It's a tic-tac-toe game. So that's from the archive. I sort of found that when I was actually doing a AI search for a Commodore computer. So my recommendations for people who are interested in implementing AI or ML tools in their DAM is basically, I would recommend first identifying a material problem that you think AI or ML will solve. For me, it's that I needed to be able to find photographs faster and more accurately. It doesn't have to be super specific, but it should be something that you can track the success of. I can't stress enough finding an inclusive vendor who will work closely with you, who will take your feedback seriously, and also that they have a diverse team of engineers or are open to diverse opinions about how the AI is developed and applied. Because basically you are in a problem in search of a solution, and you want it to be as inclusive and as robust as possible. Understand that whatever tool you use is going to take time. So in our heads, we think, oh, the AI will just tag all of these 10 million photographs, but really it takes an incredible amount of time. Please share your work and your experiments with the field, participate in conversations, because sometimes, at least for me, I can feel like I'm in a little bit of a silo, and I know there are other people out there thinking about the same things I'm thinking about. And I love to hear similar projects and new tools. And remember, at the end of the day, AI is just a tool. And it will, for some projects, it'll be the right tool, and for some projects, it won't work at all. And I always try to tell everyone that works on the collection that, humor and curiosity always helps with success, and that ultimately the goal is to make the archive more findable, to make it, to increase its legacy. And there's going to be a lot of different ways to do that, and we're gonna experiment with it. So that is it for me. And these are some early female computer programmers at IBM from the 1950s. So I'm excited to hear your comments and questions.
Thank you, Jill. That was fantastic. What a fascinating experiment you're conducting over there. Artificial intelligence continues to evolve and get smarter and get more intelligent, but it's really not that intelligent yet. So I was fascinated by your continued journey. I have a couple of questions. Someone wanted to know which AI ML engine that you use. And I just want to remind the delegates here that Henry Stewart is vendor agnostic. And we really don't really like to try to talk about the specific vendor that they use. But I would encourage you to message Jill directly. She'd be happy to tell you. And then you can ask her more questions about that later. And here's you're getting some technical questions.
Oh, okay, I'll try.
Because it's, all right. Have you used optical character recognition as part of your efforts? And if so, any comments on the results?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We use OCR all the time. We actually, in the visual recognition tool that I showed you that we're working now, that's part of that search engine, it actually has OCR built in. So for example, if I'm searching for Coca-Cola, it can actually read the photograph and find, the Coca-Cola logo, or text, it can read text on a sign. So I've used OCR on photographs, and then also we've scanned our original photographer reports, and those are also in our DAM. And we use OCR to make sure that those reports are searchable. I will say that it depends. Again, you might have to have human intervention, so you can run it, you can scan it, and then there are a number of different software solutions for developing the underlying text files. Some, we have been successful, some less so. I will say, because we have so many decades worth of historical materials, the fonts and types can change. So what might work for us as a historical archive may not work for a scientific archive, for example. So, but yeah, I found OCR to be really helpful. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, another question coming in is, how many people do you assign to do the QC? And what's the error rate like by the AI? Now, you mentioned there's only 4 of you.
Yeah, so we all take turns reviewing.
Do you?
Yeah, we're pretty, we're a pretty close team. So we all take turns working with the tool, providing feedback to the engineers that we work with. In terms of error rates, so it just, back to that first question about what platforms we've used or tools, we've worked with at least 6 different vendors. So it just depends on the kind of project, what you're looking for. So yeah, I can't provide, sadly, I can't provide a blanket statement on error rates. It depends on the tool and the project.
So, but could you just say from experience that the error rate has gotten better the more you tweet everything? I would imagine, right? That
for sure, yeah.
At first it was a lot of noise, and then you decided not to do the auto keywording, and to focus on the search engine, which I think is fascinating. Yeah,
and I also think that even the auto tagging from 5 years ago, those engines have learned. And so, if I ran those images through again, it will have improved since then, for sure. And for me overall, I feel like it's kind of the early days of the internet, right? Where we had like Ask Jeeves and Yahoo, where we had all these different categories. We categorized the internet. And then eventually we moved over to just being able to search the internet. So I'm sort of finding myself, at least right now, moving a little bit away from categorization and more towards improving the search engines.
Excellent. Another question. How did you scan so many images over such a short period of time?
Well, it wasn't, they started scanning in 1998, which was, I've been there about 6 years. So that was before I joined. And so that is to date. So I can't take credit for all of that in the past 6 years, but we have had external vendors, we've had partnerships with big tech companies, we've had exhibitions that we've done scanning for. So yeah, it's just over a series of years. And basically we love our archive. It's analog. In order to make it more findable in today's world, we just have to digitize it.
Mm-hmm. And you have an enormous photo collection, but do you also have any video in there as well?
We do, yeah. We actually, and that's another thing on my AI experimentation list. So we have interviews with our original staff photographers talking about what they shot, and it's amazing. Most of them sadly have passed away, so we have a lot of video oral histories, and yeah, so video is kind of next.
Because I do have a follow-up question on the video, and was wondering if you use the AI for language recognition and transcribing, if that would be a source.
We haven't yet, but I would love to. And also, if any of you out there have had experience with that, please let me know, because you know, I would love case studies for transcription for video and sound.
Yeah, that'll be really fun. How interesting. Well, thank you so much for a very enlightening presentation.
Thank you, Maddie.
That was great fun. Thank you all. We're going to shut down this one now. And up next in track 2, we have Fatal, to learn about how to protect your brand with content monitoring, along with AI-driven image identification and DRM. So, you know, it's all the rage right now. So if you enjoyed this one, you can continue on this track. And also don't forget track 1 to hear more things about metadata with BT. Thank you again, Jill. Thank you for coming, and enjoy the afternoon.
You too. Thank you.